Welcome to Planning Phase Syndicate. This is our deck tech for Jango Tarkin Town, and no, this is not a triple dark raid build. This is a build that has a lot of ground units and can compete very well with the aggro meta as well as other Jango Tarkin Town space builds. If you're ready, let's begin our journey now. All right, this is the list, folks, that I have been running quite a bit. There's some little bit of tweaks here and there that can be made and different things, but this is what we're going to get into. And talk about. This specific deck is not about essentially all space units. It has a couple of spicy cards in it, things that I've been running locally. I actually won a store showdown with this exact same deck against even an Anakin Blue, which is probably one of the more unfavorable matchups for Jango, as they're able to control and overwhelm, as well as basically apply tons of damage at the same time their leader gets flipped. So let's go on the journey. Let's talk about this deck. The deck itself has 3 ISB agents, 3 Greedos, 2 holdout blasters, 3 force choke, 3 no good to me dead, 2 crafty smugglers, 2 of the Kylo's TIE silencer, 2 Boba Fett's armor, 2 grenade strikes, 2 breaking ins, 3 of the Fifth Brothers, 3 Boba Fett's, 2 of the Van Brace guards, 3 of the P1 essential or P3, 3 of the P3 starships, 2 Lams, 2 Bosk, 2 Zuckuss, 2 Zero the Hutts, 3 of the Ruthless Raiders, 3 of Jango's ship, and 2 Cad Banes. Now, if you don't know what Jango does, essentially Jango, when you deal damage to an enemy unit, essentially from another one of your units in some way, shape, or form, you're able to actually exhaust the other opponent, whether you're attacking them or just one on their side. So if you're swinging into somebody, for example, with a ISB agent to do the 1 damage, you could tap down whoever you're swinging into, whereas Fifth Brother can swing into base, right, and do 1 damage to an opponent to give himself a damage, and then it kind of just boosts him. And you can also use Jango to tap. When he is on his leader side before he deploys, you have the ability to do this once per round. It's an automatic thing that happens and is not in action. When he deploys, anybody that deals damage to ground or to units allows them to tap. So essentially, we have created a build where we have different units that are able to do damage throughout them, and create a way to tap people down in an effort to kind of control the board. Our overall strategy, like I said earlier, is to exhaust units. Units cannot attack you if they're exhausted, and anything that has natural pings is always the best option. With Jango on the board, you want to be able to try to keep him safe, but he's also a big target, so if they want to go ahead and take him down, let them waste their resources for a turn or two to take him out. It's okay, because you're still going to get the ability off, and then when he goes back to his exhausted side, hopefully you've done enough damage that you're able to just overwhelm their board and take care of it. We talk a little bit about turn 1 plays. This is probably the biggest, most important thing that you can do. You have to gauge what deck you're playing against. So if you're playing against a deck that has, for example, Pillage, and you pull a Kylo's TIE silencer, if you have another turn 1 play, hold that TIE silencer, because you know they're going to pillage you, and then you can just play it out of your resource pile the time they discard it. So my favorite plays are ISB agent. If I have some sort of a card that is an event card that I can utilize with him, Greedo is also a great option, especially if you are first player, because Greedo will be able to then swing in for the 3 damage next turn. Greedo, you don't care as much about if he dies. You could play both of these guys on turn 1 and then have a little bit wider of a board. ISB agent is great if you want to be able to Tarkin Town their turn 1 play. You're playing against an aggro, you play ISB agent, you do 1 damage. Most of the time, their turn 1 plays don't have more than 3 health or 4 health, and you can actually just Tarkin Town it, and then you've wiped their board to begin with. Not always the best strategy, but depending on what they have out there, is a great way to play the game. Against villainy decks that are more control in style, you want more of the units so they have a harder time killing them as well. And it just kind of depends on where you want to go from there with that. Crafty Smuggler, great turn 1 play if you want to be able to have something that's shielded. It can trade into a unit. It can also go straight to base. You can buff it up with some of the cards that we have that'll be turn 2 plays. Your force choke is really good if they put like a really big unit out that you don't think you can deal with. If they put a sentinel out that has a shield and you really just want to be able to clear that shield without having to waste a whole unit. It just kind of depends, where you want to go with that. Same with Grenade Strike. A lot of times the Grenade Strike will be a setup for Tarkin Town. I use it a lot more than I thought I would. It is a card that we could cut if we wanted to go forward. As we kind of go forward with this deck, it might be one of those cards that just leaves the deck. But I've had decent success with it being able to put damage onto their units as well as Tarkin Town. If they could play 2 units out. So for example, I played against another CAD that played a Greedo and then played the Bounty Hunter neutral card, so that way he could do the 2 damage to my Greedo, right? And instead of me discarding another card, next turn I just claim, the next turn I can just go out and I could take the Grenade Strike and dump both the damage and wipe both their units off the board, and we're kind of back to square one. So Grenade Strike is just really good as well, like I said, to be able to set up that Tarkin Town if you need it later in the game. Turn 2 plays, the Elite P38 is the best turn 2 play, period. Especially if you have initiative, you could just play it. You get to ping your 1 damage, dump whatever they have down. It just stops them from playing. To go back to our turn 1, sometimes the strategy with that is basically what you want to do is play 1 unit, even if you have a second 1-cost unit, sometimes you just claim so that you could tap their unit down to begin with, and then you have an Elite Starfighter on the board. It's a 3/2 in space that does a lot of damage, and when it dies, it pings again. So as long as they don't kill it that same turn, you're going to be able to tap something down the next turn. You can use it to trade, use it to go into base, kind of however you feel like. It also is really good against anybody that has ambush in the air. Or they are using an ECL. If they have other targets on the board and they ECL into your ship before, you just tap it down again. There's a couple of different options that you have for it. Fifth Brother and Boba Fett are great ways to set up pressure. I originally was a little down on Boba Fett, but between the Underworld and the Bounty Hunter themes, it just works out really, really well. Being able to play him, having the ability to utilize him to kind of take down other units. He's essentially can do 6 damage to anything that has been on the board for more than a turn. It's really, really good. Boba Fett is just a really healthy character, and a lot of times people see him and freak out and just want to get rid of him. Fifth Brother is the exact same thing. People do not want to see him on the board. You play him down, you could claim. Then with the next turn, when he swings, he does a damage, and then on attack, you could do 1 more damage to another unit, exhaust Jango, and then exhaust that guy. As long as they don't have a Sentinel, Fifth Brother is really, really, really big and one of the great ways to go with this. Flamethrower and Holdout Blaster. Flamethrower is a little dicey to play on turn 2. If you have a Boba Fett down, sometimes it can be a good turn 3 play. Turn 2 goes good on a Crafty Smuggler because you have the shield on him already. It makes him a 3/3. It gets him out of perilous, whatever that peril card is, the one that basically exhausts something and gives it -2 health. That Van Brace card helps with that. Holdout Blaster is also a really good turn 2 play, especially if you're holding a 2-cost card and a Holdout Blaster. So let's say you have a second Crafty or another Greedo. You could play Holdout Blaster on your Crafty. It gives him that +1 and allows him to use Jango to tap something down. So really good kind of ability to curve out. You just have to be careful, Power of the Dark Side, or other units that want to murder your units, so you no longer can use them. For our turn 3 plays, again, the Elite Starfighter, Fifth Brother, Boba Fett, all are good turn 3 plays as well. If you need a little bit more oomph, if you need some sort of an ambush, you have a Forlom. If for some reason they dropped the Cassian on turn 3 or turn 2, and you can't quite kill him, but you want to tap him down, you want to get him into Tarkin Town range, Forlom's really good because Forlom will go into him. You can exhaust him with Jango, and then you don't have to worry about it. You can either Tarkin Town him or deal with it the next turn. If they have some sort of a Sentinel, I don't care what anyone says, Breaking In is my card of choice over Surprise Strike. And I say that very timidly, right? Because it's done very well for me, especially against like the Anakin Blues that want to have village people. I could use this on my Crafty. He has a shield. He takes out their shield and just bypasses them and just kills directly through them. And it's such a good play. you don't have to worry about it as much if they aren't running Sentinels, but it is really good to be able to get through Sentinels and not have to worry about playing it, especially if you use a holdout blaster, tap something down, then play breaking in to shoot past their Sentinel. That'll be an issue for the next turn that you have to figure out how to deal with it. Crafty again is also a good turn 2 play. You might not have a second Crafty in hand, or maybe you just got your first, and it is always good because you can play 2 cards with him, and it does kind of allow you to be able to do it. You do have to worry about pillage this turn if you're playing against pillage decks. They are not fun to play against, but we have stuff on our sideboard that might be able to counteract that. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. Holdout Blaster and Vambrace Guard, again, very good alternatives. They also set up Tarkin Towns very easily and allow you to be able to essentially tap their units down and then go aggro to their base. Churn floor plays. This is the churn that Jango can flip. So you want to be a little bit more delicate. You don't want to just flip Jango if they got an answer to take Jango off the board. I have 100% had a big issue where I will flip Jango and then somebody will go and attack into him with some sort of a Sentinel and then finish him off, and then I didn't get any use out of Jango. But Jango can be very good when he comes out, and you just have to play it right depending on what the board state is. You do not want him to be instantly killed. He can't technically be instantly killed with like a with the Rival's Fall unless they've ramped. So you don't have to worry about Vanquish. And we really don't have to worry about him being upgraded past Fell the Dragon because technically Fell the Dragon doesn't affect leaders, right? So it doesn't really actually matter. And you're able to do it. You do want to make sure you keep him out of takedown range. Takedown is one of the big ones that they can get him. They can go aggro into him. And it will give them a chance to be able to just pull him off the board. They could put a small unit into him and then tap him or kill him with takedown. And that is not always fun, but it does allow you a couple other things. You have the ability, if they have units out on the board, you have the ability with Zero the Hut to be able to pressure them to just exhaust whoever they have on the board. It is super, super good. And then she's a big butt, so she sits on here, and then you have the ability to utilize her tap down resource every time she attacks. So while Jango's out, you could tap a resource with her, and you could tap a unit down. It is so good. She also is great for upgrades. Putting a Vambrace flamethrower on her makes her a 3/9, right? You can't kill her with Fell the Dragon. You can't kill her with Takedown. You have to use a Rival's Fall or a Vanquish on her. And if they're wasting 5 resources to do that, I think we feel okay with where we're at. Bosk is great if you need to be able to ambush into something. Bosk is not my favorite play on turn 4 because I don't have an event that I could play with him, but Bosk is a really good idea if I need to basically stop one of their units, exhaust one of their units, or something like that. Zuckuss is good if you have a 4-lom on the board, because Zuckuss now becomes like a 7/7 and he's really hard to kill. And then they have to think about, if you have 4-lom on the board, they have to think about, do I want to kill Zuckuss or do I want to kill Jango? And then now they're in this conundrum. If you have more lower drop units, you can also play those. Jango can get Boba Fett's armor, even though it doesn't prevent the damage. It does make him a beefier target. You could put Vambrace Guard flamethrower on him, which makes it so that he can exhaust. He lives a lot longer. And Holdout Blaster is just an easy, like we talked about, pay 1 to tap for 1. Moving into turn 5 and 6, hopefully you've done a good amount of damage to the base. Hopefully you're hitting that 15 resources, 6. Hopefully you're hitting that 15 damage or 16 damage, right? And then you're able to help close out the game. Closing out the game should be pretty somewhat easy because now it becomes a race for you. You're less worried about tapping. You're more worried about, how do I keep their board clean? How do I get pumps to go in to be able to hit things harder? And how am I able to essentially keep their board free of Sentinels? The big thing is Ruthless Raider, because Ruthless Raider ability triggers with Jango. So even if they killed your Jango last round, you can play your Ruthless Raider, exhaust your Jango leader, and then do that damage to something of theirs, like a Luke, for example, that helps them heal. That's really a big one. Stopping their heal or stopping their Wrecker, for example, from being able to do something crazy. And if they kill Ruthless Raider, you don't care as much. I mean, it is a 4 damage unit that can hit next turn, but it is also on top of that really good to say, okay, hey, I just put 2 damage on your base, 2 damage on a unit. You kill me, great. I'm going to put 2 more damage and 2 more things. Yeah, it does kind of suck. You paid 6 resources for it, but hey, it's almost like a fire spray, and you're able to hit units and the base at the same time. It seems really, really good, and is probably the best card in our deck here. Fet's Fire Spray comes in ready. As you all know, it was in the Boba meta. Don't know what to say about it other than that. So if you have it over a Ruthless Raider, you just have to determine, do you need to tap or do you not need to tap? Can they kill either one? If you think they're going to kill one of those, play your Ruthless Raider and not your Fire Spray, because letting them kill that at least does extra damage for you, whereas the Fire Spray doesn't do any out-of-hand damage. So if you play it, can't swing with it, you've really wasted 6 resources. As we hit that turn 6 to turn 7, right? Now we're in the late game. We got to close this out. We got to use breaking in to get past their things, Vambrace Guard to be able to exhaust things and do extra damage. And then we need our Cad Bane, which is so good. Cad Bane is the best guy in the whole game, because there's 2 reasons for us as a Jango player. There's 2 reasons. One, if they are a pillage deck, we play Cad Bane, steal a couple of their units. They got to give us cards if they want their units back. Now, if they have crappy units, you probably don't have to worry about it. You can just keep playing and you're going to win the game. He's a 7/7. He does 7 damage. He's really good. Even if you play it to capture to stop their board from aggroing you, it is insanely good. Being able to play him and take a wrecker that has the 6 health, right? And then you still have 2 more health from something else. You could pick something else up and put it right into your underneath him, and then they get to pick it the next turn after you play or after you swing with them. But by that point, hopefully, again, if you're hitting that 15, 16 damage on that base, you're closing that game out pretty quickly. Like that 7 damage the next turn puts them at 22. So 25 health bases are really going to struggle. And 30 health bases, now you just have 1 more swing with Cad and it's gone. So it's really, really good. Flamethrower makes your units defeat other units and then be able to swing in. It does not work where if you put it on there and they have a Sentinel out and you swing, you do the 3 damage, you don't get to bypass their Sentinel. But it does mean that your Cad Bane doesn't take any damage. So it is actually really, really, really good. Let's talk a little bit about Spice cards. These are the cards people don't expect. Grenade Strike, people don't expect that, but it's a great Tarkin Town setup, as we talked about earlier. It's also really good later in the game if you get it and you just don't have a lot of other units to play, but you need to clear the board a little bit. This is super, super good. You can't tap anything, but it's just amazing for it. Boba Fett's armor on Boba Fett is such an underrated card. Like, everybody were like, hey, we don't need to run this anymore, but I'm running 3 Boba Fett units. If I get a Boba Fett's armor, I'll tell you what, that makes my day. It also can go on some of my lower cost units. Not that it prevents damage, but it's a +2/+2 for 2. So, like, I mean, it's just going to sit there and swing in. So my ISB agent is now a 3/5, right? Like, so now now it's still takedown range, but you got to spend more resources to kill it. And it's just not quite as fun. Crafty Smuggler is the best card. That is the best card you could put it in outside of Boba Fett, because it is hilarious when all of a sudden now you got a shielded unit that's a 4/4. So good. And then we talked a little bit about Zero the Hutt. She is one of my new favorite Underworld cards. She could be a consideration to remove, but that extra exhaust without having to do a ping means when you play her on turn 5, you can exhaust, bring Jango out, swing at something, exhaust 2 things. It's just so good. If you have Vambrace Guard that you could put on her at a later turn, she just becomes a body that's really hard to deal with. I had a game where I had 2 Vambrace Guards on her and they couldn't do anything. Like, there was nothing they could do because she just had 10 health. And by the time they chipped into her, she had cleared their board and gone straight to base twice. And while, yes, 3 damage isn't like, oh my gosh, or 4 damage isn't, oh my gosh, the best thing in the world, it's 2 turns it took them to take care of her. And by the time she was gone, they had wasted basically all that damage. Plus I had all my other units out swinging. So it's a really good card people are not expecting, and I think it should be a consideration from anybody playing this deck. All right, let's talk a little bit about sideboard. We talked earlier about pillage. Bazine, necessary. You play against a pillage deck. If you get to the end, don't wait for them to go 35 minutes for a whole game. Just concede, get your Bazines, and say, hey, no thank you. I'm going to get rid of your pillages. It also works really well. Like, Bazine is a possible consideration to replace ISB agent. It does affect your tempo of the deck a little bit, and it does affect your exhaust, but Bazine can have all those upgrades put on her, and she's really, really good. Just being able to strip that card can stop their turn 1 play sometimes, and it just, like, if you look at it, no turn 1 play, then you know what they're going to be playing for the next 3 turns to some extent, and it kind of gives you a little bit of an advantage. Hotshot Blaster is the other thing. If they got a pillage decks, grab that Hotshot Blaster, stick it in your resources, call it a day. It's great. Siding different cards out. I typically side out ISB Agent or Greedo for Bazine. If they're a ping deck, like a CAD deck, I get rid of Greedos and bring in my Bazines so I can get rid of and strip out the cards that are similar to mine that they run. And I also bring in Hotshot Blasters all the time against any sort of control deck that likes to strip my hand or stop everything from going in place. Fallen Lightsaber is kind of my iffy card. That is the one sideboard card I'm not sold on. I've only played it once or twice. It goes great on Fifth Brother, but that's about it. Like, it doesn't work as well with some of the others, but it is a 3-cost 3/3/3 upgrade. So it's essentially very similar to like a Boba Fett's armor. So if you're racing in an aggro deck, or you're playing against like a control deck that you need to be able to tap something down and then just hit the base a lot harder, the Fallen Lightsabers have come in handy. And that is probably my weakest sideboard consideration that might change to something else in the future. Disabling Fang Fighter, it's an easy conversation. Bring that in if you got anything that's got a lot of upgrades. It strips them, get rid of your people's dark sabers. They don't like it. And it's also a 3/2 space unit. You could replace it with Confiscate. I like the Disabling Fang Fighter because it gives me a body in space, and then it also strips some sort of upgrade that they have. Palpatine's the last one. People ask me, why not Dooku? So let me tell you about Palpatine. Palpatine, if you hit 8 resources, you're usually playing against some sort of a heavier, like late game mid-range deck or some sort of a control deck. Palpatine helps clear their units. Palpatine helps tap things down, and Palpatine has Overwhelm. Yes, he costs 8. If you hit that 8 resources, you probably need a Palpatine to close out the game. I like it so much better than Crate Dragon for the pure fact that I need to get done before Crate Dragon can come out. If I haven't, I probably have lost that game. And the reason I want him over Dooku is because Dooku, to get him cheaper, you have to exploit things. The only card I care about exploiting is essentially my Ruthless Raider. I like exploiting that. It's so amazing. But outside of that, you don't really want to do it just because it can be really feels bad. To have to exploit some of your lower cost units. I'm typically wanting to build a board, not destroy my board. I will tell you, in a couple niche cases, Dooku works very well with Ruthless Raider as well, because you can swing with Ruthless, exploit it, do a couple more damage on base, 2 more damage to their units, and then Dooku's also then attacking or doing his damage to another one of their units at the equal to the power. So you're essentially doing 2 and 4 out of hand damage to units on their side. And so Dooku is also a consideration. I like the upgrade package with Fallen Lightsaber a little bit more. Dooku is a consideration that could go in the sideboard, though, in the future. All right, let's talk a little bit about strengths and weaknesses, and then we'll move on to the game plan, and then we'll wrap up the episode. Hard control and hand stripping decks are usually a problem because they could take your hand, they could stop you from spanning the boards, and they can essentially bounce some of your units and make everything slower. I will say, like, decks that don't play units that are like the hard control, you probably have a harder time against if you have not beat them before they get to their 8 resources. If they're a ramp deck, I don't know what to tell you. It's going to be even harder. It's just really hard when they're able to strip your hand, or if they're essentially going to be milling your deck. Those become a little bit harder because you don't have anything you can recur outside of that. But if you can get enough slower units on the board, you have your Bazines, you can strip out certain one of their cards. For example, you have the initiative, you play your Bazine, they happen to have no turn 1 plays, but they got a Power of the Dark Side. You can immediately just pull that Power of the Dark Side, throw it in the garbage, and hope they don't draw a second one. So it kind of just depends. Those decks are a little bit harder to play against. Decks that also bounce your units a lot are very hard to play against. Waylay decks are a struggle. Anything that has that yellow waylay in it, or anything that wants mid-range, that wants to move your stuff off the board in an effort to put their bigger units down, you will have a harder time against as well. Mirror matches obviously are kind of similar. They're also hard because the fact that you have a mirror match is what you want to do with it is you essentially don't have all the space because we have a lot less space. You can ping their stuff in space, but they play lurking ties, and those become really hard to deal with without space units. And you are going to have to give up a little bit of ground. I will tell you, a lot of times it comes down to initiative with these mirror matches, but I will say we do have a little bit of an advantage being able to take Cad Bane and capture units and stop them from doing certain things, and that has won me games in the mirror match. Let's talk about the strengths. This ground units are a huge addition for tapping down. We can flip and we can be prepared to answer almost anything, and you could force them to essentially burn Jango down. It's a secret. A lot of people like don't want to lose their Jango. I'm to some extent okay with losing my Jango because I just need to be able to slam damage through. And I don't flip Jango if I don't have another unit out. It's one of those things where I have to worry a little bit about what's going to happen, right? And if he's the only one on the board or there's only one other small unit, it's a little bit harder to flip him because you know he's probably going to get murdered and you have nothing to follow back up. This deck is really fast though. You can put out 6 to 7 damage a turn. You can burn them down by turn 5 or turn 6 really quickly, depending on how you play it and what they have. And then tapping all their units just keeps the game in your favor. I will remind you one last time, Ruthless Raider is the most important thing ever. Like, that is the best card in your whole deck. You never want to resource a Ruthless Raider unless you think you got the game in hand. Let's talk a little bit about a game plan. Aggro, you're looking to tap their units and go to base faster than them. That's what you want to do. We are more of what I would call a aggro tempo deck than we are really an aggro deck because we don't like swing in with a lot of lower level units to begin with. I don't swarm the boards right now. That is a consideration in the future that possibly we'd rather just do a swarm and just do complete aggro. But right now we're playing a little bit more of a tempo game with it. So against any sort of aggro, you're looking to say, hey, hold on a second. How can I grab the board and be more dominant than what you're being here at the time? You should be able to push more damage than most aggros as long as you're able to tap their good units down so they can't play it. So, for example, being able to tap an A-Wing against a Sabine so she can't swing in with a Fleet Lieutenant is super amazing. Being able to tap a Millennium Falcon really ruins their day, and I will tell you, I will 100% hold off on playing a unit or doing certain things until they put that Millennium Falcon on the board, just for the pure fact that I know I have the ability to tap it. I will tell you, I've even taken a Crafty Smuggler, swung into base because they had no other units. They play a Millennium Falcon. I play a Holdout Blaster and tap their unit. Even though I didn't get that extra damage on base, just being able to tap that Falcon stops them. Mid-range decks is kind of like they're kind of easy as long as you don't let them get to their big end game. Mid-range decks, what you're looking to do is you're looking to say, hey, hold on. I now can out aggro you for the first turn and then value trade with you for the later turn. So the Ruthless Raiders, the fire sprays become really important. That Anakin deck, like they could take one fire spray off the table if you have it on there, but if you have a second one in hand, you could be able to play that out and just swing in again. And then if they take it out the next turn, you're like, hey, whatever. Also, fire spray could tap non-unique units. Just remember that. So if they have a non-unique unit that you do not want them to murder your fire spray with, you can tap it down for 2 resources and then you just go to base. Anything that has healing on it is a little bit harder. You have to trade with their units if they have healing, and we haven't really talked a lot about that, but that's one of the big things. How do I trade with units? Well, that's because we have a few more units than they have. We trade with those units that they have that can heal or use Force Throw, because Force Throw is a monkey and a half when they decide to play that in Pillage back to back. And so one of the big things is being able to strip those cards, but getting rid of their force units so that, yes, they can make you discard a card, but can't make you discard a card and do damage is really, really, really good. Control, you still have a decent matchup for soft control. You just have to pay attention to their ramping. You have to be able to, like, for example, being able to tap down their Sentinel unit on the one side so that way you can Tarkin Town it and then swing past them has been very important. Being able to pay attention for those dark sides, power of the dark sides is very important. You don't play as many units as like go wide decks, so you still have to be a little bit more careful against them. And then anything that steals your units, you're really sad about. Heart control, that's why I say sideboard. Sideboard is the only thing that really works really well against heart control, and even then it's still kind of a hard matchup, depending on what they draw. If they don't get really good draws, you can get lucky and squeak out a couple of wins against them. And I've done that in the past as well, but it doesn't work quite as well as it does against aggro. So there you have it. This is my Jango Tarkin Town deck that does not use Triple Dark Raid at all. Plays a few space units, but mainly just wants to aggro your board and tap a few units on the way out. This is my preferred deck. I like this deck so much better than I like the Triple Dark Raid deck currently right now, only because I feel this has more game into some of the other decks, and it's not as easy to tech against because they don't know this deck, and B, a lot of the parts of this deck that you're playing around, they don't specifically have a bunch of the answers to it. There'll be a link in the description. You're welcome to take and copy the deck, play it as much as you want, and give us some feedback. I'll tell you what, tell me, did this deck work for you? What would you change? What was your favorite card in it? Other than Ruthless Later, we all know that's the best card. But tell me, what was your other favorite cards of the deck? And is there any iterations that you would change to this to help, improve the deck? I'm open to it. Make sure you like, subscribe, hit the follow button, and we'll see you on the flippity flop. Oh, one more note. If you like our show, you're welcome to go ahead and catch us. We stream every Sunday night at 9 p.m. Eastern, so everybody can see right on Twitch. With that being said, thank you all. Have a good night, and we'll see you